Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, and today we're doing live chat number 38, I believe. We're closing in on 40, and I have co-host, staff writer Doug, as well as Hal Greenberg, sent in our direction by Ty Johnson, our chief and editor over the Nerdarchy.com. So, and apparently they're working on the same project, but on Ty's end, I think it's a secret. I'm not sure.
Yes, it definitely is. I told him he has an NDA and it's about $400,000 if he breaks it. No, I don't know why he didn't even join us today.
Yeah, yeah. I invited him. He's actually busy today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it was like I was researching you, and I'm like, hey, I know some of these other people involved as well, and one of them is Ty, who runs our website for us.
Yeah, I mean, from the very first book of The Awakened, Ty's been a part of it, so I don't know why he felt like he wanted to make it a tricksy little thing, but no, he's definitely been a very important role from the very beginning of the books.
Yeah, all of our staff writers are volunteers, so I'm like, for God's sake, if you're doing something, please like put it out there. Let us know. It's the least we can do.
So he's a private guy though, and maybe he didn't feel comfortable about doing that. So this was his way of getting the information to you without him having to pitch himself.
So we're going to out him anyway.
Oh, please do.
So The Awakened, like, is this the third project in Awakened?
It's the third book, which is the first of a modern series, but the third book. The first two books are fantasy and basically based on a another planet or another world. It's not Earth way back when. And basically the theory is a what if that second moon, because it's all about the moons in The Awakened. So what if that second moon suddenly disappeared from that planet and suddenly came shooting towards us through our galaxy and just stopped right at our moon and started rotating with it, and then gave the same powers that it did for the fantasy version to modern Earth. And Ty is written for both book 1 and book 2 of the fantasy, and he is also in the modern book that's currently on Kickstarter.
Yes, and speaking of which, in the description you can find a bunch of not licks, but links.
Wow, I didn't realize the bonus of getting a bunch of licks.
There you go. To Hal's stuff, I did a little research and tracked you and stalked you a little bit. Also to the Kickstarter, which is already kicked too.
Yeah, it's already funded. And I swear, if this thing goes well, people are going to get 2 books worth of stuff. There are so many other stories you can grab as far as stretch goals, the way that it's through eSpec Books. And what they like to do is make their goal low and then push a bunch of stretch goals in there. So hopefully people will spread the word, or if they're on the fence, they're like, well, I'm getting the book at a minimum, but there are unpublished stories, published stories. So there's some that are similar or tie-ins to this from a lot of famous authors. I mean, even ones who aren't in the book. Bruce Cordell, who works with Monte Cook Games and WotC and TSR and all that great stuff, and has some great novels currently out there, gave us a story as a stretch goal. So I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think I saw him post something.
He probably did. He's been very good to us and me personally. I do have to give a shout out to Bruce. He is a very stand-up guy and helps on a bunch of different levels.
Richard Lee Byers, I've seen his stuff before, and some of you guys may be familiar with like Forgotten Realms, and one of the authors on there, Ed Greenwood. You may or may not have heard of him. Commonly referred to the Sage of Shadow Dale.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Ed's been a close friend of mine too for a while, and it was one of those dream come trues for book 1 when I got him, and he said yes to being willing to work with me, and ever since then he's been a part of the Awakened. As well as doing some other little things for us here and there. And I help him, obviously, when I can, too. He is a prolific genius as far as quantity of words being able to put out. He is an amazing man.
I believe it. I see him pop up in so many different places. I just feel like people are like, hey, well, you're right. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the greatest story I have about him is he emails me on a Thursday and says, when is this short story due? I said, well, technically it's due Saturday, but I'm editing everyone else's, so why don't you like take 2 weeks and get it to me, and I'm sure by then I'll have theirs edited and I'll just throw yours in at the end. I woke up Saturday morning and there was a story in my mailbox. Nice. I was like, and he works full time, or and takes care of his wife and stuff too. I mean, I'm so jealous of that amazing word count.
So, so what is your involvement in this? I think I saw your name under the editor, and you're also writing.
It's actually my world.
Okay.
I created it. So basically, what happened was I went to the initial publisher of book one, and told he kept asking me to write fiction because he liked my RPG stuff, which is really how I got started over 20 years ago. Was through role playing games. And I kept saying no. It's kind of like exercise, and as you can tell, I'm a little thick. If I don't have someone there pushing me, I'm not going to do it. And that's kind of how I feel about a novel, unless I'm really kind of having somebody, I need 3,000 words. So I said, how about if I have a great idea. How about if I do a short story and then add my friends to add other characters and kind of just create the world with me, so to speak, or basically not real, I create the world, but I mean, make the world real and bring their characters into it. How about if I do that? And he's like, I have no problem with an anthology. So that's what started the entire thing for book one. Since then, that publisher really isn't printing anymore. So book two of the fantasy was actually printed by me through a Kickstarter. And then we actually have 2 more covers for book 3 and book 4 for fantasy. So we're hopefully going to get those out later. One, hopefully Kickstarter later this year, and then hopefully the 4th one next year, and then we'll figure out what to do from there. Excuse me. And I'm sure if Modern does well, eSpec may want a sequel, and we'll work on that too. I would love to be able to get two Awakened books out a year, maybe one fantasy, one other. Oh, and I also have a 3rd Awakened book coming out this year that's going to go direct to Amazon. That's about one of the islands, and I don't have a map to show you, but there's islands with different races and stuff. The land of Grimaton in the fantasy is all human. It's very Games of Thrones as far as all humans, no magic. The only magic comes from the power of being awakened. And then the islands are where the creatures and the humanoid races come from. So that way, if you're a role player and you eventually get into the RPG, which we're working on, you can decide, I want it to be all human and kind of low magic. I want it to be high magic. I want these creatures, but not these. Eventually, we'll open up all the islands, and each one has a different kind of feel and genre. Genre is probably the wrong word because it's not like sci-fi, but a different feel. Like one may have a Greek kind of feel. One may just be a humanoid island with some other stuff going on. One may be more full of undead, where undead may not exist on another. So if you wanted to include all of it in all the areas, you can. If you want to pick and choose, you can too. So, but yeah, that's how it came about. And I was lucky enough to meet a lot of the other authors through some other friends and other people in role playing. And I got a healthy mix of RPG writers and fantasy writers, and it did real well.
Cool. Oh, and you know what? Real quick, happy May the 4th, everybody. It's that day.
May the force be with you.
Yeah, it's actually our company's anniversary too.
That's cool.
Yeah, we're 3 now, but
can I burp you?
Maybe.
Okay.
It might get a little weird, but it is the internet, and weird happens.
Exactly. That might bring in viewers.
Yeah, we were actually sitting in the accountant's office like on the 3rd 3 years ago, and he's like, and when she asked us, she's like, "Well, what day you want your company to start?" Like the 4 of us just turned and looked at each other. Tomorrow.
Yeah, no brainer. May the 4th.
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to turn the Awakened into a setting for, you said, Pathfinder and 5th edition?
That's what we're looking at. We have one of my business partners through Samurai Sheepdog, Kevin Glusing, is pretty much in charge of the RPG development of everything. And we're definitely working on a Pathfinder version, and we're at the same time working on a 5th edition version as well.
Yeah, I was wondering how Sheepdog fell into everything, because I saw like on the earlier Kickstarters and the book, it was Sheepdog.
Samurai Sheepdog is me and a couple of my business partners got together. Did you play 3rd edition at all?
Yeah, I started in 1st.
Okay, so did we. But we did a lot of third-party stuff, which was through Mystic Eye Games, which was a third party. We were pretty prolific back then, and we wanted to not limit ourselves to a game company, which is what Mystic Eye Games was. So we came up with Samurai Sheepdog. I have a sheepdog personally as a pet, so that's kind of where the idea came from. But we decided we didn't want the word game in our company logo. So when we reinvented ourselves, we ended up just calling ourselves Samurai Sheepdog, putting all the Mystic Eye Games under us, and then having people kind of in charge of, you're in charge of apps, you're in charge of RPGs, you're in charge of fiction and art, which would be me, and we have another person in charge of of board games and card games, and then another person who works with him doing that and accounting and all that good stuff. And book 2 was done under Samurai Sheepdog because we lost our first publisher, didn't have anyone else at the moment to pick it up. So we just but we had all the stories, we wanted it out there, so we just self-published and went from there. But since then, I've been working with a couple other great people, Jonathan Thompson from Battle Press Incorporated. He did my my Three Musketeers spin with all females that's called Sisterhood of the Blade, and then E-Spec Books is doing the Awakened Modern. So we may end up turning to one of those guys to produce the other books and maybe even take the other ones under, but let's see how well everything does first, and then we'll talk to them and figure out what's going on. But I would much prefer writing than having to do all the publishing, printing, sending, kickstarting. So my goal is to create.
Yeah, that other stuff sounds like work anyway.
It really is, and I have a full-time job, so it really, and it was cute when me and the kids and friends came over and we had a pizza party and stuffed books into the mailers and stuff like that. But I did it. It's good. We can pause on that if I don't have to do it again.
Right, you can check that box off and move on.
Yep, exactly.
So I want to ask, how do you know Ty?
Through a third party, Darren Drader. I've known for a while through the RPG industry, and they had a little consortium of writers, and that's actually where I met 4 or 5 of the writers for the Awakened, maybe even 6, and then a couple bled over into the Awakened Modern as well. He was one of the people who was in that consortium with Darren Drader. Tora was also in there, and then and those are really the 3. And Darren Pierce was also in there too, which I'm trying to think of people who are either in or stretch goals for the Awakened Modern. But as far as the Awakened, Rosemary and a bunch of other people were part of it too. So he was a huge help when he said, I have some people, and I said, I need people. So it worked out well.
Excellent. Yeah, he's pretty prolific. He's got like 50 novels he's written.
Yeah, I mean, he's another one. He can, when he's in the groove, he can just produce. A lot of them are that way. It really depends. I'm more of a thinker and then write, and I have some medical issues, so I usually write with a friend. So I usually do a lot of the ideas and the story, and then we'll put it together, and he'll help weave by typing. But I have some issues with nerve damage in my hands, so typing is a little harder on me. And then typing for work, and then typing also for pleasure, so to speak, makes it real difficult. So I've been doing that with a partner for a while now, just to help with my hand, but it's still my stories and our ideas together and stuff. But these guys who can, I can do maybe 2,000 words on a good weekend. I'm no Ed Greenwood to pull 5,000 in a night, especially a work night, or like you said, producing these novels, and I already have 3 of them done. I'm just waiting to put them out. What? What? Who does that? Who has 3 in their pocket? But yeah, these guys but they're very talented, and I love them. And like I said, they were great about bringing the world to life. That's really what they did. Is I created the world, they brought it to life.
Cool. Well, I mean, we're kind of doing something similar with the stuff that we do, because we create all this stuff, but it's all in videos. So we have people like Doug here and some other really cool writers that work with us that are now working on putting words to our voices.
That's cool, and that's a great idea. I mean, because it really depends. I'm much more of a talker, and different people write different ways. Some have outlines. Some best ideas though come just from chatting. And what if we did this? That's great. And then somebody riffs off that, and suddenly before you know it, you've got a game adventure, a setting, a book, whatever.
So to pick your brain for a second, Hal, you created these worlds. How cool is it to see all these writers, playing around in your world? And also, how does that work? Do you just have a big tome of facts? Here you go, create in this world?
I would love to say yes. My tome is ginormous, but it's not. And the answer is, first, the feeling is awesome. It's probably right up there with Birth of My Kids, because it's almost like a birth of a kid. It's so. How many people can say that they've had Ed Greenwood and Ty and Darren, both Darrens for me, and and Richard Lee Byers and stuff right in your playground? That's awesome. I love it. As far as the tome, it's very short. It's only a couple pages, and I purposely did that, and I expand on it as we go, but I purposely wanted it to be specific in certain areas and extremely open in others. So they had a playground to play in. One of my things I love doing is I love giving people enough information to succeed, but give them enough room to be their creative self and not stifled. I do that with my artists too. I want to give them a very good description of what's needed, but purposely leave it open enough to where they can do their style. And that's one thing I did with the covers too, because I actually have 4 book covers done for the fantasy already, because I had famous TSR people for the most part do the covers, and I wanted their interpretations of the same 2 characters. So for book 2 was Tony Sudlow, who's a good friend of mine, who did book 2. Book 3 is going to be Jeff Easley, and book 4 I'm looking up right here is Fred Fields. And I also bought all the original covers, so I actually have them hanging in my room too to inspire me to keep writing and keep doing things. But that was like one of my goals too, is to work with them, because I'm an art geek. I love art, and just stuff like that, and movie props and TV props. So to be able to hang that art in my room, lifetime achievement, success.
So all those guys that I think had recently interviewed with a friend of ours, Brian Stillman, because he's doing a documentary, Art of D&D, Eye of the Beholder. So yeah, so I was familiar with all those names, and of course, you know, from all the original art before I actually paid attention to who did all the drawing. So it's cool. Like we're just like this tight knit, close family niche. Doesn't extend out too far. You know, you can't. The more I talk to people, the more I've run into common acquaintances.
Well, and it is, incestuous is the wrong word, but it is a very small group, and it is amazing how the gaming community, art, as well as the writers, and even the board game and card game community too, is so open. And the basic and the reason why, and fiction too, but it depends on what level of fiction you are, as far as how open it is. But the bottom line is, you producing something is not going to take away my money. If somebody wants my item, they're going to buy it no matter what. So we don't need to be competition. We can help each other and work with each other and make it work just fine. And that's why I think so many of us are so friendly with each other, because we get it. But that's the truth. I mean, me making something for 5th edition is not going to have you stop buying something else if that's something you really wanted, needed, or thought that was awesome. It's not. And come on, look behind you at all the books. Now, granted, those are official D&D, but I have bookshelves and bookshelves of books. Some I've read, some I've referenced, some I've never even picked up and read, but I thought they were awesome. So you could never have enough books or art or stuff. Everyone wants to trim down. I want to bring more in, baby. Give me another bookshelf. But yeah, so I agree, and it's great that way. I mean, that's great that you can ask questions and get answers, and and so people are so honest, and open about helping.
Yeah, I'm really loving my journey. Although I'm a little bit on the different side of things with more of the media of it, but I just recently started doing these live chats and talking to more people that are in industry and just getting to know guys, which has been a lot of fun. I recently quit my day job to do this, and I'm like, I need to fill my days with doing something. So I'm like, I know I'll do live chats and I can talk, and the fans will come on and watch and whatever. And then I was like, you know what? It's gonna be really boring if I'm just talking to myself. So
no, I appreciate the time, and I think it's cool too, and I think it's great. I mean, it's so neat to see different people's how they came up with ideas, or what gets them excited, or what they're playing and what they're doing. And it is amazing at how cool this, the industry really is. I mean, it was funny. One of the things when I was Mystic Eye Games back in the late 90s with the 3rd edition stuff was I was the first one to hire Monte Cook after he left Wizards for playing D&D, and I was the first one to hire Todd Lockwood after he was let go from Wizards. Now, it was one prestige class for Monte, because that's all I could afford, and one picture from Todd, but I purposely did that because I admired them so much and loved them, and I wanted to, and people are like, oh my God, how did you do that? It was your first product. And I'm like, I asked them and paid them, Yeah. So that's the key to it too, is people need to ask. Because the worst that can happen is say no. I mean, I'll be honest. I asked Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman and everyone else to be in my anthology, and I was going to pay them. they didn't have time, or it wasn't working for them, or they had too much other stuff going on. I get it, but it didn't hurt to ask. The worst that can be said is no. And that's my theory, and it's worked pretty well so far.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, I have a saying, back when I had the day job, is like every year I ask for a raise whether I deserve it or not. But you could take that same philosophy into like almost any area of life. If you don't open your mouth and you don't say anything, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, you could sit there and say, I wish, I wish, I wish. But if you asked, you might have, one of those wishes may have come true. I mean, look at me. I have a Jeff Easley original with my characters, Fred Fields original with my characters, Tony Sudlow original with my characters. I have Ed Greenwood writing in my world, Richard Lee Byers, Ty, the Darrens, Tora, who is unbelievable as far as a writer. She's my opinion, an undiscovered gem that more people should be using. I love her work. I have all these people in my playground because I asked.
So, right as of right now, everything's an anthology. Do you plan on moving into full novels?
I probably won't personally because I have a lot of other stuff going on. I currently have 3 contracts for board and card games I'm working on as an art director and a writer kind of on some of them. So I've got a lot of stuff coming out in the next 2 years. But if an author came up to me and said, I would love to license The Awakened or work with you on a novel, I have a great idea. As long as I could kind of content edit it and make sure it fit, I would be open to that.
Cool. So when are you thinking for the RPG? How far along is that?
I'm hoping end of this year-ish. I want to say ish because Samurai Sheepdog, everybody is a full-time employee and has family members. And one of the things we did, unlike when we were Mystic Eye Games where we had such a tight schedule, which really kind of burned us out, we want to make sure family and real life comes first. So we never lock anything in until we actually know it's going to be out and done. But it is being worked on, and it does have people assigned to it, to do stuff. So I would love to say we were originally trying to think GenCon, but realistically there's no way because we haven't even ordered any art, and most likely it'll be a Kickstarter first, and then we'll also bring it with when people want it. So I would like to, but the thing about us is we want to make sure it's pretty much almost done, except for the stretch goals, before we even bring it to Kickstarter. Now, we may wait for the art for Kickstarter, but we want to make sure the written word is done first. We don't want people waiting a year and a half for the game. If we do the Kickstarter, we want to hopefully have art will be a 3-month turnaround. Hopefully we'll have it in edit for a month, and then we can get it to the printer. So we're hoping to have like within a 6-month turnaround, which is why we're waiting. The last thing we want to do is delay people or have people worry or wait on that.
Yeah, I have one Kickstarter I backed, I think, when we first started Nerdarchy. I'm still waiting for it.
I have some that are even older, and that one I just got, and some are just gone.
Yeah, that is Kickstarter.
And that's why I don't want to do that.
Much appreciated. So are you going to, when you release the setting, will it include modern rules, or is it going to be just fantasy?
At the moment, it's going to be just fantasy as far as the core book. With what we're thinking about doing for stretch goals is we're going to do the island and then the Isle of Bones, which is the book that's coming out in a couple months on Amazon, the anthology, I should say, for sure. And then what we're going to do is stretch goals is we're going to open up the other islands for the RPG. I would say that if it sells well and it does well and everyone made money and they're willing to work on more, I could totally see a supplement coming out for modern, but we were not going to add that into the initial actual core book.
Okay. So the chat is they've decided to start without me. Our intern has taken control and gone crazy over there, and they're starting the roll call. So if you guys want to call out where you're from, it is like it's one of the things I like about doing the live show is seeing where everybody's from and what corners of the earth we're reaching into. And it's also a perfect place where they like to F with me because I can't pronounce anything, and then they like to put things in there. And if I skip over it, and because they know it's hard for me to pronounce, then they like to break my balls.
Well, and some is tough, like Poughkeepsie. It's easy to roll off the tongue, but if you look at the word, I don't think I would ever have called it Poughkeepsie until I heard it.
So Hal, you know, as a gamer too, I'm imagining you've probably played games or maybe ran games in your world. How much of your games informs the stories, and the flip side of that, like, do you ever get inspiration from the anthologies? Like, oh, I'm going to bring that back into my game world or my home game.
It's funny. The answer is kind of yes, and and definitely the ideas. But in order to describe the powers, I used a lot of game terminology for people in my style guide, and luckily everyone was either written for games or a gamer understood. Like one of the things, just to explain the awakened, if you are lucky enough, quote unquote, to become awakened, you either become bonded with one specific animal, or you get one kind of like, I want to say element of power, like casting spells. Like it could be fire, it could be water, but it also could be concealing yourself. Like that could be a power over plants. But I was really concerned, like, hey, look, I've got a crow, awakened crow. That's awesome. Oh, I have fire. I'm burning the world. So one of the things I made sure is that it wore you out. So I was using the term mental constitution, which of course we all know came from role playing and D&D specifically. So I was using mental constitution, where you may be able to do a fairly powerful spell, but then you may be passing out or in a coma potentially, depending on what you did, in order to balance the level of play. Because in my mind, I always knew that it would probably become a game. So I wanted to make sure that everyone wasn't like, well, I'm just going to pick fire. Oh, great, I'm going to pick lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt. But the world has no spells. There's no clerics. So you may be an awakened healer, but there's no clerics. There's no others besides the awakened powers. There are no spells. There's no magic weapons initially in the world of the awakened. So that's why I kind of say it's a little bit like Game of Thrones, where there are some metals and woods that may give you some, I mean, if you want to use gaming terms, you could say some plus stats of distance or accuracy or damage, but like Valyrian steel or such. Not that that's mine. I'm just using it like Game of Thrones. But there's and only humans on the core island. And I did that on purpose. I wanted it to start that way and then open it up as we go. But yes, that's why the islands have other races, magic, creatures, because in my mind, everything can be compared to a game. Got to make sure that the gamer in me is satisfied with what we're working on.
Excellent. So going into the roll call here,
Yep.
we have Michigan with Bunions and Dragons. Love that name. And he asked a question earlier. So the first rule of Nerdarchy thumbnails is we don't talk about those. We have Orange, California, Ohio, Dallas, Jacksonville, PA, New York City, Denmark.
Wait, Jacksonville, Pennsylvania, you said?
Jacksonville,
or Florida?
Florida. It's Florida.
Hey, I'm Tampa, baby.
Yeah, we were just in Tampa not long ago. We got PA, we got New York City, Seattle, Sweden, Tampa, who's right there with you.
Hey,
Jose Suarez, which I actually got to play with.
Nice.
Minnesota, Oregon, Fort Worth, Texas, more Texas, more Seattle.
You got to say the city, especially if they're hard to pronounce. Don't you? I'm on here. I want to hear you mess up.
You will. It just depends. No, they like to hear me say Saskatchewan, Canada. Well, we have another Canada here, but they're not saying which one. We got Canary Islands. We don't Minnesota. We don't have as many crazy places. We'll get like Bulgaria sometimes and Argentina.
That's cool. Gamers it's an international language.
Yes. We even get people for Professor Bill from fictional places.
Yeah, hey. a different one each time. So, you said you're in Tampa?
Yeah, I'm in Tampa.
Yeah, we did a Comic-Con cruise out of Tampa back in January. So we actually got to hang out with some of the fans down there, and I ran a game.
Nice. It's, as you can see in the corner, my ceiling fan's going because it is Florida, and it's going 24/7, 365 because it's Florida.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. You had mentioned earlier that you're a collector of movie props and stuff. What's your favorite one?
Oh, it's like picking out kids. What would my favorite prop be?
Or something that was like an exciting find, or
yeah, I've got stuff from Serenity Firefly, which I love. I've got have you guys seen it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. At the end of Serenity, when the Alliance throws that giant hook into the wall and pulls it down. No spoiler alert, by the way, if anyone hasn't seen Serenity. Sorry about that. In order to kill those guys, I have the actual metal hero hook. So that one's pretty cool. I would probably say at the moment, and it's topical because of tomorrow, I think my Guardians pieces are probably some of my favorite. And I do have an ill daughter, so we're now collecting together. She's been ill for about a year, so I've tweaked, like I'm actually in the process of selling some of my Firefly props in order to get more props that she's into. Because since she's homebound, she's stuck in the house all the time. I want to make sure it's fun for her. So we've picked up a couple cool Guardians pieces, and those are hard to find. I have one of the pieces of currency from the collector from that scene. I have one of the Ravager patches from the, when he was a Ravager and Yondu and stuff. And I have a branch from when Groot. Oh, spoiler alert! By the way, anyone mute it for a second. If you haven't watched Guardians 1, when Groot goes boom, I have a branch from that scene too.
That's awesome. That's awesome that you're doing that with your daughter too. That's really cool.
Yeah, and she's not. I mean, she's 17, but so she's not a young kid, but she's an odd duck. She always has been. Like she loved House, and when she was like 7 and 8 and stuff. So some of her favorite pieces. We have something from Sons of Anarchy. I have a piece from Breaking Bad, Star Wars, a couple pieces from Harry Potter, which she's a huge fan of. So she's definitely into the nerd culture. My son, if it's not on the Xbox One, he really doesn't care.
So you couldn't get the Reaver harpoon?
No, I couldn't get that one. And I've seen people with Reaver weapons, and they're cool looking, but I just thought the Alliance harpoon, and I'm actually in the process of trying to find someone to buy it. I have the hero piece, which means it's the actual piece that was used by Zoe. I have her earpiece from Serenity, and it's framed up real nice, and that I'm actually currently selling in order to just fund some other stuff.
Score.
So, but it's fun.
So Nicholas Duschek, how does a person start to become a writer? Personally, my flippant answer would be by writing, but what do you got for me as a professional?
Honestly, well, first, I really don't even consider myself a professional. I would consider somebody like Richard or Ty who do it full time. But your flip answer is the correct answer, even if it's not the flip answer. It's writing. What I usually tell people who have great ideas and want to write is to write, because you need to get out the garbage in order to find the gem, and you need to practice writing. And by what I usually tell people is, if you're working full time or you're a student, is maybe pick an hour or 2 on the weekends and get an egg timer, and get on your computer and shut everything else but Word or whatever document you're using, Scrivener or whatever, off except for that. Do not have Facebook on. Do not have, I'm just going to listen to the Nerdarchy podcast while I'm doing this. Do not do that. If you have to listen or hear something, use music that you're unbelievably familiar with that will just you'll ignore it as it's playing, but it's in the background for noise. And then set that timer for that 1 hour and write. Make sure, if you have kids like I did when they were younger, my kids even now don't wake up usually on the weekends till 9. Get up at 8 and write from 8 to 9 or something, but you need to write. And then, I don't have an agent, and self-publishing is so easy now with Amazon. Anyone can be a published writer if you really want to be one. Definitely have your friends edit you first, but then have your enemies, and we all have those idiots and douches in our family or friends that will just rip you apart. That's the guy you want to read your book and edit it first, after your friends kind of give you the, okay, this is a good idea. Like when I bought my house, when we had the inspection, I told my agent, who's the inspection person when you're selling a house that you're most afraid of, that you hate when they inspect a house? That's why I want to look at my house. I want the jerk to make sure they see every flaw and find it first. So before I buy the house, I know what I'm getting into. Same with the book. Have that rules lawyer go through everything, double check everything, let them rip it, fix it if you think it needs to be fixed, if it's an idea, and if it's grammar, punctuation, obviously fix it, and then send it to possibly people you might be interested in. Join book clubs. There's usually a bunch around, and they'll trade books and manuscripts to get ideas and bounce ideas and get some help with them. But that's a great way to do it. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's to write. And it's not easier said than done. I tell people that all the time, and I'm bad at it. I'll sit there and say, Saturday morning, I'm going to write. And then I take the dog to the groomer. I've got the house to myself. And then I'm like, oh, what was that one movie that just showed up on Netflix? And then suddenly 2 hours later, I'm like, ah!
It's all those distractions. Like, I'll start after I do whatever.
Well, and that works too, as long as you can hold yourself to it. Sometimes treating yourself is a great way of doing it. Hey, I'm going to do it for an hour, and then I'm going to go have breakfast, or I'm going to, I normally don't get bagels because of the carbs. I'm going to go do a bagel. Do that if you have to, or I'm going to watch an episode of Jessica Jones if I make 1,000 words today.
I meant doing it before you write. You're like, I'll start writing after I finish, after I vacuum the carpet and after I do the...
Well, I mean, that happens a lot too. You're like, I always wanted to re-alphabetize my books. First by edition, then by title, and then alphabetically. And, oh, boy, I can't believe that took all that time. Oh, I didn't write today.
Yeah, I can't second enough, too, that just closing all the windows, because it's like, even if you're doing research, like, well, I want to look up this thing for research, it's like, you're going to get lost on the internet for sure.
If you need to, you can always put a note in there for yourself. Just put a couple asterisks on each side if you need to figure out a cool name for something, or check if this is real, or does this exist, and do that for yourself, or highlight it. Try not to use the internet. If you have to Google something, like you said, in and out, be a ninja, but do not Facebook, do not Google Plus, do not go to YouTube and start looking up stuff. Bad. Do not put on a movie if you have a TV near you, or you have two screens like I do, and you can have Netflix running on one and your Word on another. Who are we kidding? It's like working out. I can always do it later.
I'm just laughing at the chat a little bit. And guys, by the way, I'm going to drop a link in here for an article on nerdarchy.com by Ty, and it looks like it has something to do with writing, so that might also be helpful for you as well. It just dropped this week. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I think the gist of it is you need to write. So
correct. And focus, and make sure you're focused, and that's the key too. Train yourself to set the time aside and then write about anything. Like when I write fantasy, I don't read fantasy. I purposely avoid it, and I'll read, some modern stuff, or I'll read, a lot of, like a Grisham book. I used to love reading Crichton when I was doing it. Something not related to your topic, because you don't want to get shoehorned or upset because you kind of had that idea and now somebody already used it. No, read an autobiography or read something else, and then get inspired about a good writing, and then go write what you want to write.
That is actually excellent advice as well. And also too, by reading other things that aren't in the genre you're writing in, it all crosses over. So, and you might be able to insert things in a way that is far more interesting than if you just stayed if you're writing fantasy and you only read fantasy. It opens up new ideas. Yeah, and you can sometimes how do you think steampunk and cyberpunk came around? If it wasn't for mixing and matching, it would never have happened. I mean, a great example is my book that we're working on now, the Sisterhood of the Blade. It's what if the Three Musketeers had a female version that worked for the Queen? I was literally watching the Three Musketeers, the good one though, with Charlton Heston, and from the 70s, not that recent garbage. And I was talking to my daughter, and as we were watching it, because she's never saw it before, and I was trying to explain to her how awesome the books were. And before I knew it, I thought, there's not enough strong female characters. What if they existed here? They do have a good strong female character with the one, but I'm like, what if they had their own for the Queen? Why doesn't the Queen have her, Musketeer version? So I contacted, Jonathan Thompson over at Battle Press, and before you know it, Anthology funded, and that's one of the things I'm working on now, is getting that out to everybody for and by the end of this year. And it's such a cool idea, and it did so well that we're either going to expand and keep going with that, or possibly do the Sisterhood theme with other genres like King Arthur. What if it was Queen, and stuff like that.
Sounds like a really cool idea.
And you can put that in RPG terms just as easy as well. I mean, just because it's fiction. I mean, if you think about it, all an adventure is is fiction with stats. Really. I mean, so if you can write a great adventure, you can write great fiction. If you can write great fiction, it's probably pretty easy for you. Now, it may not be easy to get the numbers in there, but that's why you grab somebody who's comfortable with that game and is and comfortable with the numbers. You could make an adventure or a game setting or a book. So the key is wanting it and then kind of focusing enough to be able to do it.
So are you going to try and get more female writers on those books?
Sisterhood was at least 50% female. I wasn't going to do it until I had it, and I was hoping to get more, but it was not as easy, and we had a couple more, and they ended up dropping out for other reasons before we started the Kickstarter. So, Sisterhood has at least 50%, and I'm always open to trying new authors. People send me stuff. I have open calls on my Facebook page, The Real Hal Greenberg. You'll see my ugly mug and my daughter doing dumb grins. Friend me, and if you see any open calls, you're more than welcome to apply, quote unquote. The Isle of Bones book that's coming out in a couple months was all open calls with a couple of my anchors like Darren Pearson stuff in there too. But I also brought a bunch of new people because I was new once. And in fact, the Awaken original book has a couple people who were never published before, and I did that on purpose.
You hear that, staff writer Megan? Go friend Hal. Check him out.
Come on. And RPGs are always looking for females. In fact, if you truly want to do that, give me a second. Chris Pramus from Green Ronin, sorry, what a brain fart, just asked for an open call for females to work on an RPG. He wants to have an entire female staff work on, I think, a specific RPG. I always repost those too. I'm all for getting all that stuff in there. I love it. I don't, if it's good, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think he just got a hard time for it was for an art project that he was calling for. If he wanted some female artists to throw some art his way, and
it was before the announcement for this book. And it was, I don't think it was art, but he was looking for female designers for a different project too. And don't be idiots. I mean, honestly, there's people looking for all different types of designers. And just because they didn't want us for that doesn't mean they don't want you for the 18 other projects. Like, give it a break. I have yet to see anyone ask for Jewish designers, because then I would be one of like the four. I'd almost be a shoo-in. But I'm not offended, and if I'm not familiar with a certain area, I'm not going to apply. But if you're familiar with the area and you fit the credentials, do it. And if you don't, make it yourself if you're that unhappy. Don't bash the company. Everyone has different feels or needs and ideas. I mean, I purposely wanted 50% of my writers to be female in Sisterhood because it was about women, and I wanted to support that. So if you didn't get in and you were a male and you're unhappy, I'm sorry. But if you were a female and didn't get in, I'm sorry too. But it was not because you were male or female.
Yeah, Megan is one of our staff writers, and she plays in my Wednesday night, actually Sisterhood game. It's called the Scarlet Sisterhood, and I've got 3 players that play in that game with us, and they're usually pretty outrageous. They keep, but I was talking with Doug about it a little bit just as you were coming on before we went live, and they're always trying to Pokemon my monsters.
That's where the Pokemon came in. Gotcha.
Yeah, or enslave them. I'm not sure which.
Hey, that works.
They were rescuing halfling children from goblins. And
Why would you rescue halfling anything? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, one of them is a halfling, so she might have took that personally.
All right, sorry, Megan. I don't even know if it's Megan.
It is, but she always wears adorable elf earbuds when she plays, so it fits the part. But so they end up capturing the goblin boss at the end and taking him prisoner, and duping him into thinking, the wizard dupes him into thinking that she's put a rune on him that's going to explode if he tries to do anything naughty.
I love it.
Then the 50 Shades of Green jokes started flying afterwards.
50 Shades of Green. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
It sounds like our games. One of my best friends, Jim Butler, who worked on Forgotten Realms with Wizards and TSR and stuff, he's part of the game. We work on or we play every 2 weeks on Roll20, and some of this stuff we come up. We were like, we should just videotape this or let people listen to this, and I'm like, I think we'd all be out of jobs. I really think we would get people upset with us, but hey, but we have a good time.
That's the important part.
So Hal, you've been an editor for a long time. What's that like? And especially, how is it editing people like Ed Greenwood's work? Is that kind of intimidating? Or
It's easy doing Ed's work. And it's interesting. I've been an editor for a while, but I've been an editor really primarily for content. So I haven't really had to. I always co-edit with somebody else who's actually going to be more picky on the grammar and the syntax and stuff. I'll do all of that as I'm going through because I always do the first pass. But it's awesome. I mean, plus it's like a sneak peek. So I always consider it it's like, Hanukkah or Christmas. I'm like, I get to read it before you do. But it's great. I mean, very rarely have I ever had an issue where I went, oh my God. And usually I'm of the belief too that I want to help you, not hurt you. And I want everyone to be in the book and succeed. So if I do have an issue like that doesn't make sense or that doesn't work or where did you come up with that? I always usually will say, good news, bad news. Bad news is there's no humans on this island and you wrote this entirely about humans. Good news is there's elves on this island, and I think that would even be a cooler story as if you changed it to the elves that were on this island and kind of tweaked it a little bit and made it more like that. Or, so I try not to just sit there and go, this was bad. I'll sit there and go, hey, this doesn't work. Or a great example is Darren Pierce in the first book wanted to use gunpowder, which there is no gunpowder. So instead of gunpowder on the ship, I said, why don't we use like a trebuchet or something, or giant harpoons that they're shooting out. And he's like, oh, that's even cool, So I always want to try to come up, if I can, with a solution or at least some ideas, but I still want for them it to be their words. So I never say change this to trebuchets or harpoons or spear guns. I'm like, hey, there's no gunpowder, but this would be kind of cool. Or he's using dual pistols in this scene. You could have him use, just dual wield and, like that, or even dual wield crossbows. That would be kind of, if you want to get the same idea. And, and I always have them come back and they're willing to write for me again. So it's working.
So I think you have a volley of friend requests coming in.
I already friended Megan and a couple people. Is Todd one of them? Because Todd has no mutual friends, and if he starts, asking me for money, I'm going to be really upset. Is Todd in the chat?
Todd is in the chat, and he said,
"All right, you're a friend now, Todd." At least a couple of them had mutual friends, or you as a friend. And I figured that was there, but yeah. Todd doesn't like anyone else, just me, because he's friends with nobody else but me. Thanks, Todd. You're my BFF.
Apparently.
Whatever you need, buddy.
I'm surprised. Usually I tell them, because we have a private Facebook group for those people. I'm like, just look for us, friend us. Plus, we do a monthly fan game. And when I'm connected with people on Facebook, it is so much easier to to coordinate the game.
Well, and you can do the whole page for the game too. I mean, that's what we have for our Pathfinder game is we have a whole page dedicated. So we'll always do the bi-weekly summations. If we ended up getting treasure towards the end and we were tired, we'll post it in the chat and talk about which character wants what or what we're going to buy. And, and then of course, post the jokes and stuff like Travis Hansen, who does all those great RPG comics. Those go up there all the time. We're a big fan.
Oh, yeah. He just ran a really successful Kickstarter.
Yeah, he did. He's great. I've been talking to him about possibly maybe doing a cover or something for us too, just because he's such, I think he's hysterical. And he talk about a comic that A, is cool looking, and B, hits gaming, on the head every single time. You either said we've done something like that, or B, I could totally see my group doing that. Every single time. The guy's a genius.
He is really good, and it's funny too because he hasn't gamed in a long time. I don't think either.
He keeps his he keeps his finger on the pulse. Is Brian Bird one of these guys in the chat?
That name sounds familiar. I think it is. Right. I think that's actually Lavoyer.
All right,
in the chat.
Problem. I accepted his friend, and he wasn't anybody else's friend too. So Brian, you're my new BFF too. It's okay. Don't be jealous, everybody. I can have multiple friends.
We actually had Travis on. He was one of our early.
Cool.
That might have even been. I think that might have even been before I started doing the live chats. We just happened to have him on. I brought him on, and I brought Brian Stillman on at the same time because I knew Brian was a huge fan of his. He kept trying to buy all the original pieces, and he kept just missing it.
That's funny
because he's a huge collector.
Well, I'm a big fan of I have a lot of fantasy art too. I have Ken Kelly and Todd Lockwood, and besides, not of my. Those are just the covers I have with the other guys, but just in general, I don't even know if I could. I'm gonna take this real quick and.
This sounds dangerous and risky.
Yep. So there's some of my. There's the Todd Lockwood piece right there. I know I can't get super close, but it's from a Magic card, and then there's some Star Wars stuff. And then
you mentioned Jeff Easley too. You had right.
Yep. That is right here. That'll be the cover for book 3.
That's awesome.
And then there's a sword I had made based on a sword I want to use. And then for the first, that's the book 2 that Tony Sudlow that we had come out last year. And then the first year, Jim Wampler, who's a huge designer now, and that's a nice little welcome to Florida. There's an ant. But he did he does this Marvin the Mage comic, and I commissioned him to do a Marvin the Mage, and then I asked him if I could keep the original that wasn't colored. So
super cool.
Total nerd. Love it. Can't stop.
So do you have anyone in particular that you had the sword designed to use on?
Do I oh no. I do besides collecting movie props though, I do collect sharp weapons as well. So that was just a great combination of being able to get my hey, I want to use this in one of my book covers for the elves, and I can have this made by somebody who I know. And it was Todd Dula, GDULA bladesmith. So it was a cool combination for A, having Todd be able to create something for me, and B, having another sword in my house. And it's it's sharp as hell. So it's hung on the wall and away from everybody.
You're ready for the zombie apocalypse.
I am. I have that stuff in the other corner. That's in my getaway bag. No, I'm just kidding.
I always tease my daughter about having a go bag. She's always ready.
I always say it.
Somewheres.
I always say I have a go bag, but I really don't have a go bag.
Oh, your secret's out.
Yeah.
Sorry. Our secret, me and like 50 other people. That's it.
Well, don't tell anyone, you guys, especially my BFFs.
Yeah.
Brian and you guys don't give it away. I don't have a go bag. I always joke about it though.
How many people are in the chat today?
About 50. We're sitting at like 49.
Cool.
It's not bad for a Thursday afternoon.
No, and like I said, guys, if you're interested in Fantasy Awakened 1 and 2 is on on Amazon. I would make sure you get the Awakened 1 revised edition. It's an extra story and re-edited. And Awakened 2 is ours. And then the Awakened Modern is on Kickstarter if you want to see. It's kind of superhero-y because the powers you get, if modern day you'd call them superheroes, but a what if, and it's currently in the Kickstarter process now.
So, and like you said, there's a lot of stretch goals too, so you could end up with a lot of extra stuff on there.
Unbelievable. I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, and she said, my goal is to give people as much value as they can. So I make sure the funding goal is low, which it already funded. And then people will get excited about the stretch goals and hopefully we'll see a bunch of them and make it worthwhile. And I'm like, man, that is cool and different. So yeah, I mean, you're potentially, depending how well it does, because it's still got 26 days or something, you could get 2 books for ebook for $5.
Yeah, not a bad deal at all.
No.
So if you're looking for other artists to follow, have you heard of Crystal Sully?
I want to say the name sounds familiar, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. Well, you get a chance to look her up. She does fantastic work. We had her on the show not too long ago. Yeah, I affectionately refer to her as the Mistress of Monsters. It's kind of like her thing. But yeah, she's definitely a rising star in the art world right now, I think.
Sulley?
Yeah, Sull. No, Sully, maybe.
No E. Okay. All right.
Not sure.
I will do that in a couple of minutes when we're done.
Yeah, I'll double check the spelling for you because I have it.
Oh, you can. Okay.
It's just Sulley.
Yeah. No, yep. There is no.
And you said Crystal? I better do that now, or I'm never going to remember.
Yeah, Crystal. She does amazing work. We had her on for a live chat, and we ended up doing like half the live chat was us just screen sharing her pictures and be like, so why'd you draw this one? It wasn't my intent. It just worked that way.
And is it CRY?
Yeah, CRY.
Yes.
Freelance Illustrator. Got it.
Yeah, that was interesting. Listening to her, how she came up with the different creatures.
Yeah.
No, I just put a friend request in. Cool.
Yeah, she's been doing
Oh,
You
I
know,
guess
a
I
lot
should
of
show it back up.
yeah, she's been doing a lot of RPG work and some video game work. I
Well, I mean, if people are talented and stuff, depending on what I've got, we always do look for other artists too. The board game thing is a little different because I usually need to hire one person for a ginormous project. But for the role playing, we don't mind taking a couple different artists, and for book covers, we try to change it up a little bit depending on what style we're looking for. So if their rates, that's the problem though, is the rates aren't huge. But if people are already in the industry, they know, which is always a shame. Even for writers, you're definitely not going to get rich off doing what we do, so you better love it and have a great time doing it.
true that.
I guess that's the other advice I should give that guy. And Jim Butler, like I said, one of my best friends from Wizards and TSR, his big thing was, how do you make $10,000 in the RPG business? Start with $20,000.
Nice.
Love that joke.
Yeah. Some things never get old. So we just got a couple more minutes left, guys. If you got any final questions you want to ask, if you got anything you want to go over one last time, Hal, now's the time to do it.
Like I said, I'll pretty much friend you if I know it's not somebody who's going to ask me for money, or you're from Russia and asking me out for a date, although that does make me feel good for a minute or two when that 21-year-old hottie wants to hang out with me. But I pretty much try to do all things nerd. I on my Facebook page, I do not go political. Maybe once every 4,000 days. Not something I like to do. I try to make it all interesting, topical, and fun for me at least, and hopefully you'll enjoy. I'll post everything from some of the movie props I get, photos, to what I'm liking in the industry and what other people are promoting or selling or looking at. I've done a little bit of everything. The Awakening was a 5-page comic in a recent kind of comic anthology-ish kind of thing. We did a small little piece for an Awaken piece there. So I mean, I've played with it all and tried it all, and bottom line is go for it. That's, as far as advice is, if you want to write and you want to do something, go for it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen is it never gets published, but you still did it. I mean, that's the accomplishment is you did it. So, have a good time and enjoy. And that's really what all the stuff I do, the boards, the card games, the RPGs, the fiction, is it's cool to have other people say, I liked it, or this is neat. That's awesome to me. Or, and those, people, will sit there and say it's no big deal. But when I send a book to a friend or, their family, and, they say that their son, read the whole thing and thought it was awesome, there's nothing greater than hearing that they did that. I mean, there really isn't. The money's good, as far as I like money. But just the compliments and knowing that people are reading and enjoy reading or looking at what you're doing, that's the part that keeps me going.
So Christopher Knight wants to know, I have a female...
From the Brady Bunch?
Maybe.
Sorry.
I'm not sure. I think this guy's still alive. He's got a friend, a female artist that makes his advertising for him. And what's the best way for her to connect with you and give her portfolio to you?
Great question. I would say definitely have them friend me on Facebook first, and then message me the portfolio or a link to DeviantArt or whatever, and I will take a look at it, and I will say looked at and noted in there, and that's not a rude thing. That's just me saying you're in my memory and you're locked in. And I have come to people that I haven't worked at with in a while when I feel that they match what I need. A lot of people love to do anime, and that's not really what I go for. So while I think some of the stuff is unbelievable, it may not be what I need. But whenever I'm looking at something and I'm like, oh my God, I might need something anime, I have some of these people who already are comfortable in that genre and doing it. Or sometimes I want something to look a little bit more comic-y or realistic, and I definitely pick and choose based on all that.
So Nicholas, thanks for the great advice, and we also appreciate you coming on here and chatting with us.
Oh no, it's been a great pleasure, and like I said, it's fun. Keep rolling and keep having fun. I mean, this is an industry for some, but it's also a hobby, and and that's why I love reading what other people do and playing other people's games, and have fun. That's like I always tell people, roll a crit, enjoy, because I don't get to roll them. I'm a terrible dice roller. Ask anybody.
Yeah, I am too.
So bad. Doesn't matter if it's roll 20 in person. The other day, I actually downed a dragon virtually by myself because I critted twice in one round, and then the next round people had a run, and I critted twice again, and I literally did it almost in one. I basically told my friends, I said, I'm done gaming forever, because that was the pinnacle right there. Exactly. I dropped my bow instead of my mic, and I walked away because I cannot beat that. I usually crit once every 6 weeks. 4 times in a game. Oh man, it was awesome.
Now you have to retire.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I can't game anymore. I'm sorry. Everything else is downhill. You know, it's like that first law.
My players get a lot of crits because I make them roll for everything.
No, I wouldn't mind that, except the fact that literally 1 through 5 is if this was golf, I'd be a pro. But RPGing, sadly, very rarely do the low numbers go.
Yeah, unfortunately. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. I think our high was right around 50 today. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us. I want to thank Hal for coming out. Thanks for jumping on with me, Doug. Until next time, everybody, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.
Thanks, Doug.